and I know you've seen it before because we've been doing it a lot, and it's called y equals mx plus b, right? Okay. Does anybody remember the name of that form? It's called Slope-Intercept Form. There's a lot of different ways to write your equations, and there's standard form, there's point slope form, there's slope-intercept form. Slope-intercept form is the one I know for a fact that you all are the most comfortable with, okay? You've worked with it before. It's the carpet cleaner that charges $50 just to come to your house and an extra $39 per room. And you don't want to spend more than $106, whatever, right? So it's the form that you're used to. It's this beginning value, and then it's the rate of change, okay? And then what goes on over here depends on what you're doing. So I'm going to put y equals x in black, and then I'm going to have, I'm going to use this, and I'm going to put plus b here, and then the m is going to be here in green, okay? So y equals mx plus b, let's really get to know this formula. So b, I am not sure why they use b, but I know that I say it's for the beginning value. Okay, it's always the, sure, I'll come to your house for a $50 installation fee, or sure, you can have T-Mobile cell service. You got to pay $40 a month, and then I'm going to charge you per minute or per text, right? It's always that beginning value, okay? And then when we graph, it's also going to be where we begin our graph at, okay? M, it's actually, I say it's where you move, okay? When we go to get lines on paper, and we're not making tables of values anymore, that's way too long. I'm going to put a point here, and I'm going to move according to the slope. I told you guys before, M stands for what French word? Does anybody remember? Monter. So M-O, like in Spanish, you guys are learning like the ER verbs and the AR verbs, right? Hablar means to speak, jugar means to play or to work, right? So M-O-N-T-E-R is a French word that means to climb. And what do we climb? Hills. And what word is associated with hills? Steepness and slope, right? Okay? So M actually stands for Monter, but I like it better when I say it stands for move. Because when I ask you how to plot a line, I'm going to say, okay, begin here and move according to the slope. Okay. So knowing that, I am going to start you out as simple as I can think of. And I'm going to give you an equation, and it's going to say y equals 2x minus 5. What's the slope? And what's the y-intercept? Don't overthink it. It's the slope is the coefficient of x as long as what? Y is by itself. Yes. So as long as it's in slope-intercept form and y is alone, okay? If y is alone, then your slope is the number in front of x. Be careful, what's your y-intercept? Minus 5, so it's going to be a negative 5. And that's all there is to that one. So I could say to you, hey, I could even mix it up a little bit. I could say y equals 8 minus 1/2 x, couldn't I? What's the slope? Be careful. Negative 1/2. What's the y-intercept? 8. It doesn't have to do with the order that they show up in the equation. It has to do with the coefficient of x. Got it? Okay, we're going to cruise a little bit. Gets a little harder. Y is equal to x plus 7. What is your slope here? Careful, it's kind of hiding. It's 1. So your slope is 1 because that's the coefficient of x. And your y-intercept is 7. So then what would negative x plus 7 equal? Your slope would be what this time? Negative 1. And your y-intercept, same. Okay, I know I'm going fast. I'll give you a minute to slow down. Guided notes would have been nice for this, huh? To have just fill in the blanks. So, the number in front of x. Good so far? All right, how about this one? Y equals negative 2/3 x. And that's it. Y equals negative 2/3 x. What's your slope there? Negative 2/3, right? But what is your y-intercept? What's your beginning value? Where do I begin? 0. Okay, so let's talk about this. When I didn't see anything in front of the x, the coefficient was an assumed 1. You don't assume 1 here, right? You assume what?
0.
A 0. If you have to physically write in a plus 0 because there is no plus minus number at the end, for you to know that it's 0, then do that. What does that mean my beginning value is then? The origin, correct? You're going to begin right here every single time that the y-intercept is 0, okay? All right, now that's pretty basic. Now let's get into those pesky horizontal and vertical lines. What's the slope? It's not 5. Well, the first thing we encounter is, well, shoot, I don't see an x. Y is by itself, but she said the coefficient of x is the slope, but I don't see an x. So guess what? If you don't see an x, then that must mean that there are 0 x's. Is that a little clearer? What is your slope now? 0. What is your y-intercept? If you forgot, could you give yourself a quick little sketch and say, oh man, I forget. I'm going to make a quick table of values. I'm only going to put 2 points because that's all I need. They're telling me y has to be 5. Doesn't matter what I put here. Let me just sketch this real quick. 1, 5, 2, 5. Oh, okay. Horizontal line. And then she told us that stupid "oi" thing, right? Because if it's horizontal, the slope is 0. And now does it make sense that that's the y equals? When y equals a number, it's a horizontal line with the slope of 0. Silly way to remember it. Or put a big old 0 in front of the x. Got it? All right. I want to see if you can tell the difference between y equals 5, y equals x plus 5, and y equals 5x. You see the difference? Maybe or maybe not. Let's look at here. So let's do y equals, this is y equals x plus 5, right? What would y equals 5 look like? We already did that one. Right? What does y equals 5x look like? In y equals 5x, what's the slope? 5. Hey, that's kind of a big number. It's pretty steep. What's the y-intercept in y equals 5x? So can you kind of visualize what's going to happen when I type in y equals 5x? It's going to be a pretty steep line through the origin. Did you connect all that? Look at it again. Y equals x plus 5. Y equals 5. Y equals 5x. Knowing the difference between those three is going to be huge in this lesson. Okay, how about this one? What's the slope of that line? It's not -2, and it's not 0. Good. So remember H-O-Y and the weird letters of the alphabet. When it's a vertical line, the slope is undefined, and that's when you have your x equals. Hey, 95% of the time I'm graphing a line, it's starting with y equals, isn't it? But every now and then, this pesky little x equals comes along. If you forgot, make x -2, make y whatever you want, plot -2, comma 1, -2, comma 2. Oh, that's the vertical one. Okay, I know now my slope is undefined. What's your y-intercept? Is there one? Is this line where's this line touching the y-axis at? It's never. It's parallel to it. So for B, what would you put? None. There is no y-intercept. Do you remember that being a test question before? Is it possible for a line to not have a x-intercept? And you said, yeah, it's just parallel to it. All right, are we good? Because moving on to the next step. If I say find the slope of this line, we're in a little bit of different ball game here. Because number one, right, y is not by itself, so get it by itself. Do you remember that process? Okay, what do you have to do first? Get rid of, cancel out the x term, right? So let's get rid of the whole x term. Bring down, be careful, many of you forget about that negative. Bring down the whole y term. Remember here what to do? You have a decision to make. Do you want the x to go first? I do. So I'm going to put a negative 2x and then my positive 9. Could you do your 9 and then your 2x? Sure. You do whatever one you want. What's the last step? Divide everything by negative 3. Okay? And so these cancel. I get y equals. If you have two negatives, you know they cancel and they make a positive, right? So what's my slope? Don't be afraid to take that x and put it with the middle. Okay? And what's my y-intercept? Thank you, Evan. Positive 9 divided by negative 3 is, okay, now I got it how I want it. Now what's my slope? 2/3. What's my y-intercept? Negative 3. Okay, I'm going to show you something right here. A couple years ago, this is how I used to show the work. What's the only thing I did different here? I just put the whole expression with one negative 3 as opposed to breaking it up. Kids were getting this wrong years ago, so I decided to be like, okay, you have to do each of them by negative 3. Let me just show you, because if you see this, I need you to know what to do with it. Let me just ask you this. What would you do with that 3 if you saw it right there in front of you would distribute, right? You would say, oh, that means I have to multiply every term in here by 3? Sure. So what do you think when you see an expression with 1 3 under it? It's like distributing except not multiplying. It's distributing and dividing. It's literally all it is. So it's like, oh, I got to divide that 9 by a negative 3, and then I got to divide that. So if you see that, this is all it means. It means divide each of the terms in this expression by the denominator. Got it? All right. Awesome. Moving on. Okay. What do you do if you have something like this? 8y minus x equals 15. Same thing as before. You get y by itself. So I'm going to add x. This one's a little different. This one is the most common one done incorrectly. Okay. Divide by 8. You can decide if you want to put 1 or if you want to put it under each. I think it's a little easier to see. Now, my slope is not 8. There is a 1 where? In front of this. So what do you really see? 1/8. So y is equal to 1/8 x. And then you know what? My y-intercept is kind of ugly. It's 15/8. I can leave it 15/8, but if I were to say the fastest person to come up and plot 15/8 on a number line, would you rather have that as an improper fraction or a mixed number? Mixed number. Because 15/8, man, it's super close to 16/8, and 16/8 is 2. And so 15/8 is like 1 7/8, which is literally like right there. So would you rather plot 1 7/8 or 16 or 15/8? 15, the mixed number. Okay? All right, last one I'm going to show you is this. I just had kids. Everything is on one side. This one's not bad. So when you got nothing on one side but a big fat 0, and you have to get y by itself, what would your best option be? Should you cancel the 2x and get it over here, and then cancel the 4 and get it over there? Would you rather move 2 things or 1? So which one should you move? The y. Okay? So you're going to subtract 8y. It's just thinking. It's just applying things. Negative 8y is now equal to 2x minus 4. And then divide by negative 8. So y is going to equal positive divided by a negative. Ignore that I just put that there. I was thinking that that was just an x. So 2/8 is reduced down to negative 1/4. And then the negative divided by a negative is a positive. So you're putting a plus sign there. My y-intercept would be a half. It would be halfway between 1 and 2. Got it? Okay. That's it for now. I want you to